Everybody just stand up, just for a couple of minutes. Okay, now, if you, a friend or a loved one, has had your life impacted by cancer, sit down. Okay, if you, a friend or a loved one, had your life impacted by heart disease, you can sit down. Or if you, a friend or a loved one, had your life impacted by mental disorders, depression, anxiety, dementia, autism. Okay, well, you can still stay, but it's for everybody else. Oh, okay. Okay, there's only one person standing. Okay, now the thing is this a sign of a healthy society or a sick society? Sick, exactly, and that's what we gotta go over, because it's not really disease. I mean, the entire healthcare system now is based on a medical model called homeostasis, and this has been around since the 30s. And it was based on an idea. Wait, did I just say science or idea? Idea. It's an idea. It's not based in science. You see, what they're trying to do is that homeostasis means the body is always trying to maintain a certain regulatory system. So this means a certain blood pressure, cholesterol level, respiration level, digestive level. You know, so what we can do in that idea, not science, we can measure blood pressure, and if it's beyond what we think is normal, we give a chemical to alter physiology and bring it down. If your cholesterol is too high, we bring it down. If you're too sad, we make you happy. If you're too happy, we make you sad. You know, I mean, so, wait, okay, no. Okay, but the whole physiology is based on an idea of homeostasis. And so in this idea, disease is from systems wearing out, bad germs, bad genes, you know, just stuff that's supposed to, you just wear out. You're susceptible. Okay, so it's based on fear. Now, the frustrating part is that true? If that's true, then we actually have the sickest species on the planet, because there's no other species that has conditions where they can't regulate their own physiology. I mean, would you ever want to check, does anybody in here have a dog or a cat? Okay, what was his blood pressure this morning?
I didn't take it.
You didn't take it? Did you check your animal's vital signs? Respiration? Oh, that's right, they're self-regulating. Oh, what am I thinking about? Okay, well, human beings are like the stupid animals that you can't regulate your own bodily functions, that you have to go to somebody else who's smarter than your body that's going to self-regulate it. So that means that diseases, they're from, and people are sick just because we haven't found the right drug or surgery, okay, or we haven't got there in time. So now we're going to ask you about your genes. Okay, did your uncle have heart disease or cancer? That's okay. We'll start you on drugs right now. I know you're fine, but it's okay. Oh, your breasts are okay, but you had a cousin that had breast cancer? Okay, we'll remove them. Don't worry about a thing. Okay, and no, but this is the psychosis that people are going through now. You know, it's kind of like if I told you that a giraffe lives only about 25 years and they have the highest blood pressure in the animal kingdom. Now, elephants live about 70 years and they have lower blood pressure. So you might say, well, let's do an experiment. Okay, now granted it's interspecies, but let's give some drugs to lower the blood pressure in a giraffe. Now, doing this, in theory, the giraffe should live longer, right? Based on a homeostatic model transferred to interspecies. The problem is the giraffe comes to you and says, man, every time I lift my head, I'm dizzy. I know, Dramamine. Okay, so we'll give the animal Dramamine to solve the dizziness. The problem is they can't lift their head high enough to get the leaves off the tree. So I know that's a good idea. We'll get them genetically modified trees so they only grow. Can you see that that's dumb or dumb? Okay, yeah, so we're not going to do that. Now, this is the Helsinki businessman study. Now, since the pharmaceutical industry actually runs the laboratories, there's no independent testing of drugs or vaccines. If you ran a drug study for 10, 15, and 18 years, and your boss wants a positive outcome, what if your data kept showing negative outcome, negative outcome, negative outcome? Would you get more business? No, so here's the problem with the Helsinki businessman study. Now, they took two groups of people in Finland, Both, had the same amount of smokers and drinkers and poor diet or poor exercise. One, they saw the doctor once a year and gave, advice to, weren't expected to follow. The other group, they treated with the most modern chemicals based on the homeostatic medical system, where they gave them diuretics, beta blockers, which are blood pressure drugs. They gave them cholesterol drugs, to lower blood lipids. All of this stuff. The problem is, at 10 and 15 years, they found out there was 4 times a death rate in the treated group. So 4 times. Double the death rate overall of everything, but for just cardiovascular disease, 4 times the death rate. Now, would your boss be happy or sad with those results? Okay, so you got to fix this screw up, because obviously, even though you're working with toxic chemicals, and it's kind of like altering physiology in a giraffe, you got to come up with something. So I like the discussion in the end of this 15-year-long study. The unexpected results of the Helsinki Businessman study seem to give a pessimistic impression of the multifactorial part of prevention. 4 times a death rate if you took a blood pressure drug as opposed to not. Pessimistic or really bad? That's not pessimistic, that's just flat out stupid. See, now when you look at this, currently our population is dying. Our kids are dying, our population is sick. And so there's a reason for this, and it has to do with how we're treating it. Even comparing ourselves to Europeans, we have higher heart disease rates, higher cancer rates, asthma, diabetes. Granted, half of their countries don't use genetically modified foods. They have less of a vaccine schedule, they do less medications, they have higher blood pressure normals. So, they're doing less drugs than we are. In fact, we have about 5% of the world's population, and we use over 90% of the world's drugs. So, there's something different. But when you look at our population, our kids are kind of like the future. They're the ones that are going to be taking over when we retire. And so if anyone's over 50, anyone in here over 50? Okay, good, don't plan on retiring. Okay, you just won't be able to, because right now the kid populations, 1 in 2 have a chronic illness or disease. If I said 1 in 2 baby water buffaloes have a chronic illness or disease, would you think that species would be around for a long time? No, this is the sickest species. And we're talking about the Academy of Pediatrics, the Journal of Pediatrics, Archives of General Psychiatry. This is not one group, but something is causing chronic illness and disease in our children and also in our adult population. Now, this is an example. See, we get a vaccine-damaged kid every week, at least, okay? And so you're talking in a chiropractic office. Okay, we're supposed to be, for just general overall health, we're not seeing a lot in the past of vaccine-damaged kids. The last year, it's been crazy. Last week, we had 2 cases, and we're talking one 5-year-old and one 8-year-old with ulcerative colitis. Have you ever heard of a 5-year-old or an 8-year-old with ulcerative colitis? This is very unusual. Well, this right here, the picture on the left, you'll see that big black area, and what we're looking at is the pelvis and the lumbar spine. That's actually what a leaky gut looks like on an x-ray. And she was diagnosed with ASIA, which is an adjuvant-related inflammatory response from vaccines. Now, it was destroying her. If you have a leaky gut, you're going to have an inflammatory response, you're going to have a low-functioning thyroid. She was down to like 60 pounds. She was dying. She was literally dying. Now, that's her x-ray on the right 90 days later, and she's healthy. All we had to do was just heal the gut, detox her system. But when you're talking, by 6 years old, you're talking about 49 different vaccines. Okay, and by 18, you're talking about 69. Now, what if, because we haven't seen those 2 groups of people mate yet, but let's say we get an 18-year-old that finds another 18-year-old attractive, and they both had about 69 doses of 16 different vaccines. They mate. And of course, both their parents are medical doctors, so they're going to get the flu shot during the pregnancy. Okay, then they're going to have the hospital birth, so the mom's going to have Pitocin, which again further damages the kid, and then they're going to further get the hepatitis B shot for the kid, and of course, since the mom won't be able to give milk, they're going to give the genetically modified soy formula that's microwaved in the plastic cup to feed the child. So this is the system that Jack built. Okay, this is the homeostatic system. You've heard of the analogy of the blind man looking at the elephant. You know, one guy says it's a wall, the other guy says no, it's a tree, the other guy says no, it's a snake. Well, that's the same system of the medical world. If you figure the gastroenterologist is an absolute expert in diseases of the gastrointestinal tract, is he aware that if the person's in a hyper or fight or flight state, like a nervous system that's excited, that blood supply and nerve supply is going to be leading to gastrointestinal pathologies? No, they don't even think about that. They just toss in, steroids, anti-inflammatories and antibiotics. That's their main therapy for everything. When you look at the endocrinologist, is he aware that adrenaline and cortisol are produced under perception of the environment through the nervous system? And that the relaxing hormones, say like serotonin and dopamine, are produced in a parasympathetic state or a relaxed state? We're going to cover this next Tuesday when we talk about the nervous system and your body's own control of hormone regulations. But is the endocrinologist taught about the nervous system? No. I mean, it's so disjointed, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So what this system is based on is that homeostatic model. Each one of these professions have their own parameters. And if you don't follow within those parameters, okay, you get certain chemicals to alter your physiology to bring it down. Now, what's frustrating is it's a fear-based system. If I said, look, here's an antidepressant, I really don't know how it works, nobody does in the body, and the side effect is suicide, would anyone take it? What I just said is true. Nobody really knows how they work. So what you have to do is figure the entire training in the medical world is for the distribution arm for the largest industry in the world, the pharmaceutical industry. Now there still is a liability for the drug companies in relation to medications, not in relation to vaccines. There's no liability there. So you have the largest company in the world forcing a medical product onto you without your consent. I know it's only kids currently, but by the time 2020 rolls around, they'll have the Healthy American program. I forget what it's called. I think it's Health in America, or it's ridiculous. It's going to force every adult to have the 13 required adult vaccines. And they're doing this because fear of the unvaccinated. Have you heard of that? That unvaccinated people spread disease, they're toxic, they're dirty, they're filthy, they're not clean like us Americans. Okay, well, not only is that ridiculous, but when you actually look at the science, we did a talk last week on viruses shedding, or vaccines actually shedding living viruses. It turns out the polio can shed living viruses for up to 2 months. We're talking the flu vaccine can shed living viruses for about 28 days. We're talking the DPT can shed a living pertussis for about 28 days. And I'm starting to see this 28-day thing a lot in the vaccine world. And I thought that was kind of weird. Guess how long the studies ran for? 28 days. I know. So does it last longer? Who knows? I don't know. Okay. So when we look at this, we're coming up, when I asked about cancer, almost everybody sat down. So you'll be happy to know that they changed 2 of the most popular cancers that are no longer considered cancer. I know, you're thinking, what? Wait a second, if I was diagnosed with ductal carcinoma in situ, the DCIS, and my wife had her breast cut off or something because of this fear factor, and now they're saying, oh my God, we just recategorized it. It's not a problem. Or if you had swelling of the prostate and they shove a large gauge needle about 12 to 20 times through the prostate to try and find these abnormal cells, and then they squirt it down and they say, oh my God, you have intraepithelial neoplasia. And a few years ago, that would be considered cancer. We'd have to remove your prostate. Of course, you'd lose sexual function. Probably bowel and bladder control would be lost also. Now they're saying, don't worry about it. It's not even cancer. Were you aware of this? See, the entire system is not just broken, it's freaking evil. These guys are not basing this stuff on science. It's insanity. It's foolish to think that everybody is going to be living in this homeostatic model. And then we're dictating our care, okay, by the things that are completely unreasonable. Now, here's some of the researchers that came up with that. And I love this. The use of the term cancer should be reserved for describing lesions with a reasonable likelihood of lethal progression if left untreated. Can anyone say, duh? I mean, okay, had a patient in from San Francisco. Okay, that's about, I don't know, 500 miles away from us. She comes down and they gave her a cancer-causing agent to clean out her intestinal tract. This is what they do for a colonoscopy. Then they shoved a colonoscopy camera up in there. I don't know if you've heard this, but those cameras can spread, toxic components. Several people have died from the colonoscopy procedure. Well, they go in there and identify precancerous lesions. I'm sorry, they're not cancerous lesions, they're just lesions. They're not, I'm precancerous, no. Okay, I produce 10,000 cancer cells a day, but my immune system stops it from growing. Okay, and then they have, oh, you have stage 0 breast cancer. What? Okay, what idiot is, you throw around the cancer word, people are going to start to think, oh my God, I've got a disease, but precancerous just means that the tissue is not healthy. Does that make sense? Okay, particularly when they're saying stuff is cancer, then they're saying stuff isn't. No, this is enough. What we're looking at is the medical world is being challenged by facts and science. And every belief system goes through these certain stages where you have this discovery and then this rigid aspect of thinking. So if I said, hey, look, the sun comes up in the east, and I'll bet you there's a flaming chariot and a guy named Apollo driving it across. We could build temples to Apollo, we'll have a good time, okay? We can sacrifice some goats, that way we'll be assured that the temple's gonna, the sun's gonna rise every day. And you'll say, yeah, what about Poseidon? Yeah, there's a god of the ocean too. Okay, we'll sacrifice some fish, our boats will be okay. So we develop this rigid aspect of thinking. And then all of a sudden you think, well, heck, I sacrificed my goat, but the sun didn't come up. Or my ship sank, and we did kill the virgin, okay? No, I'm kidding. Okay, so you end up with challenges with that belief system. So it's the same thing with not just the homeostatic model, but hey, wait a second, you got all the vaccines, you're taking the drugs, you're taking the cardiac drugs, you're taking the cholesterol drugs, then all of a sudden you develop type 2 diabetes because your cholesterol is too low and you find it's linked to the cholesterol drugs. And you think, wait a second, I'm following all the rules, but my health is declining. Can you see that you might have a challenge there? Oh, I've got joint pain, but my doctor's giving me a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, however, it's destroying my joints. Okay, are you going to have a challenge with that belief system? Absolutely. So now we're right on the crux of this new belief system that gauges vitalism. Okay, it's that your body is self-healing and self-regulating, just like your dog, just like